Side. I'm your host, Jeff Doggett, coming to you on the greatest station in the nation from the greatest location in the nation. Shout out to everybody listening to us as far north as Lewiston, Maine, as far south as St. Petersburg, Florida, as far east as Staten Island, New York, and as far west as Stockton, California. For all of you listening to us in points in between, good shout out to you as well. For those of you that are listening to us around the world, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever greeting best suits the time zone that you are in. There are several things that you can do to stop the spread of respiratory diseases such as COVID-19. Number one, wash your hands with warm soap or water for at least 20 seconds. Now, if you don't know what 20 seconds are, just sing happy birthday to yourself, and when you've completed the song, you've completed 20 seconds. Number two, cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze. Yes, yes, I know that's common sense, but how many of you are like me know that the least common thing in this world today is common sense? So please cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze. Number three, stay at home when you are sick and stay away from people who are sick. That job, that event, that whatever it is that you think can't go on unless you're there, guess what? It's going to go on. So please stay at home when you are sick. Also, wipe down frequently touched items and objects with some type of disinfectant. And oh, by the way, you may want to mix in some hand sanitizer in your vehicle so that when you go to the gas station and pump your gas, you will have something to sanitize your hands since you do not know who touched that pump prior to you. And this was brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station, No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Powered by Google and sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines. If you are in the Cleveland area on the first or third Saturday of the month, I have some great news for you. At 6812 Woodland Avenue, right here in Cleveland, Ohio, between the hours of 10 a.m., you get the free bag of groceries, no questions asked. But not only do you get the free bag of groceries, but you also get free clothing for adults and children. That's right, for adults and children. So you get a free bag of groceries and you get free clothing for yourself and any children that are with you. But wait, it doesn't stop there either, because in addition to the free bag of groceries and the free clothing, if you are there between 11 a.m. and 1:30 p.m., guess what else you get for free? You get a free hot lunch, a home-cooked meal, a free hot lunch that will be yummy to your tummy. So let's look at it. You get free clothing, no questions asked. You get a free bag of groceries, no questions asked, and a free hot lunch, no questions asked, that will be yummy to your tummy. When is this again, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. It is the first and third Saturday of each month. Where, you ask? It's at 6812 Woodland Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. Well, what time again is it, Jeff, you ask? Well, it is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we want to thank the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, We Care Ministries, and also Williams Temple Church of God in Christ, who houses this event each month. For those of you that are new to this show, this is what we do. We talk politics, we talk sports, we talk the issues of the day. I throw some topics out on the table, and then I give my take on said topics, and then we invite you to call in with your take on those topics, as someone has done, and I think they're on hold now, so we'll get to them very shortly. But we throw those topics out on the table, and we invite you to give your take on said topics. Now, you do not have to agree with me. In fact, that's what makes good give and take, if you will, on a talk show. But we just ask that you be respectful, that you make your points concise and clear, and you don't ramble on and on and on. So what is the number, you ask, to do that? Well, the number is 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. So here's what we have today. We're going to talk about the following subjects. And by the way, this is open phones all for both hours. We have no guests scheduled today, so it's just you and me. I invite your calls unless you want to sit there and listen to me talk for 2 hours, and I don't think you want to do that because I wouldn't even want to hear me talk for 2 hours straight. But we invite you to call in. Call in with your takes at 216-939-5087. Open phones, as I said, all show today. No guests today. So just me and you. For those of you who've been trying to call before and couldn't get in before because we have guests, today is your day. It's open forum all day today. So, that being said, this is what is on the table today. We are going to talk about Lamar Jackson. How Lamar Jackson defeated the hypocrisy of the National Football League. Overcame it, defeated it, and won. And we have a caller already. Welcome to the right side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from.
Mark from Cleveland.
Hello, Mark. What's on your mind?
I want to jump on this potty conversation there. We're talking research going on.
You want to?
You missed it. This is the right side with Jeff Doggett now. She's on 1 to 3.
Yeah, she's on 1 to 3. So give her a call next Saturday. I'm sure she'll be glad to hear from you, Mark.
All right, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. Thank you. So again, we were saying that we were talking about Lamar Jackson and how he exposed and prevailed over the hypocrisy of the National Football League. That's one topic. The other topic that we're going to talk about today, the other topics, I should say, that are on the table today, we're going to look at the comments of Gianna Antetokounmpo after the shocking upset loss against the Miami Heat. Actually, their shocking upset playoff defeat, where the number one seed and the best team with the best record in the NBA and the team that I picked to win it all this year was bounced from the playoffs. The number one seed bounced by an 8 seed. And a reporter asked Giannis a question after the game. He had a very interesting and poignant response to that question. So we want to look at that question as it applies to a sports context, but also to a real world, everyday life context. So we're going to look at that. We're also going to do, since we're in Cleveland, and so if you're a Knicks fan, you can call too and gloat. But we're going to do a post-mortem on the season of the Cleveland Cavaliers, which came to an abrupt end on this past Wednesday here in Cleveland, as they lost in the first round series to the New York Knicks in their series 4-1 in the gentleman's sweep. So we're going to do a post-mortem on the Cavs. We're going to give our thoughts on why the Cavs did not have a more successful run in the first round of these playoffs. What are some things that they need to do in the future to improve the team? So we're going to look at that. And then also on the table on Monday of this past week, we got 2 bombshells dropped on us by 2 diverse networks and 2 diverse individuals. And that bombshell, of course, that was dropped on us on this past Monday was the dismissal by Fox News of their number one host. As a matter of fact, the number one talk show host on cable news networks had the highest ratings of any talk show host on any cable station, and that's Tucker Carlson at Fox. But then later in that same day, as a matter of fact, it was not too long after the news about Carlson came down, that we then got the announcement from CNN that their on-air host, Don Lemon, was also dismissed. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the reasons why and those 2 things happen, at least in our opinion, and then what does the future hold for both of these men. So that's what's on the table today. Now, if you have something else that you want to talk about that we didn't cover, that's fine. Again, you can call us at 216-939-5087, 216-939-5087. If you're a regular listener to this show, you know that I have dubbed the National Football League the NHL instead of the NFL. And no, I'm not getting my sports mixed up. I'm not calling the NFL the NHL as in the National Hockey League, which is the recognized NHL. But if you're a regular listener to this show, and if you're new to this show, I'll just repeat what the NHL stands for. In this case, And I dub the NFL, the National Football League, the NHL, which is the National Hypocrisy League. And for various reasons, and not to go too much into depth, but just in case you're a first-time listener and you just got shocked off your chair by that statement and comment, I call it the NHL because I believe that the National Football League is the most hypocritical sports league in the world for several reasons. Number one, just to give a brief synopsis of it. Number one, they say that one of their main concerns, if not their main concern, again, this is what they say, but they say that their main concern is player safety and player health. Okay, you're a regular follower of the. I'll give them their proper respect here and call them by their proper name. If you're a regular follower or fan of the NFL, you know that there's been a move over the last few years or so to make the game safer, to outlaw certain hits, to upgrade equipment and helmets and what have you to try to diminish the number of concussions, which leads to CTE and all of that. So they purport that they are very much concerned about player safety and player health. All right? This is what they say. However, what they do does not line up with what they say. Because when this move started to take place, there were 16 games in the season and 4 preseason games. So there were some players, not the star players, but there were some players that were playing 20 games a year in the National Football League. Because some played every preseason game, especially if they were someone trying to make the squad and they made the team. So they added another game to the season. They wanted to add 2 games to the season. They added 1. So now they have 17 games, and they cut a preseason game. So it's still 20 games. But the hypocrisy in all of this is not only did they add another game, which then now gives one more game, it further enhances the chances of players suffering injuries, suffering concussions, and raising the possibilities of them developing CTE after they retire. Not only did they add a game, but they have a game every Thursday night. Now you say, well, Jeff, what's the big deal about that? So they're playing a game Thursday night. What's the correlation here between that and so-called hypocrisy that you're talking about? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. The National Football League is not a contact sport. The National Football League is a collision sport. You have players that are 6'3", 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", weighing anywhere between 200 and 250 pounds at certain positions, running into each other. And I'm not even going to mention on the line where you have even bigger people, size and height-wise. But you have these individuals in the 6'3", 6'4" range, let's say average weight 240 pounds. Okay, so I want you to picture this. Now, a significant amount of them run a 40-yard dash at a very significant amount of speed. The elite ones run around a 4.3, 4.4 40. Those that are at some other positions like linemen, quarterbacks that aren't fast of foot, they're running at 4.9, 5.0 on 40. So that just shows you how fast that they're running. All right. So you have these individuals, as I said, averaging about 6'3" and 235, 240 pounds, running these let's say average 4.640 time. At this amount of speed, this amount of weight, this amount of muscle girth, running into each other 65 to 70 times a day on a Sunday. Okay, so I want you to picture this. This is the equivalent of having 60 15-mile-an-hour car crashes in a 3-hour period. Now, I realize that every player doesn't play 60 minutes because some are on offense. They're only on the field when the offense is on the field. Those that are on defense are only on defense, and those that are on special teams, some may play offense and defense and special teams. I get it that no player is on the field for the entire 65, 70 plays, which actually is about 130, 140 plays because each team has about 65 to 70 plays. But they're on the field a significant amount enough time, where they're having these collisions at 10 to 15 miles an hour. Let's say that they only have 30 of these collisions. They're only on the field for 30 snaps. I tell you what, you go out and get in your car and you run in to another car. Now, keep in mind, you're in a car where you have steel and metal and all this around you, and you have a seatbelt on. But get in your car and run your car into another vehicle 30 times at 10 to 15 miles an hour. And then you tell me how that is going to feel, what kind of effect that is going to have on your body. And mind you, as I said, you are surrounded by steel and metal in your car. These guys here have equipment on, but they don't have steel and metal and things of that nature surrounding them. So you see the picture I'm drawing here. So this happens on a Sunday afternoon, 30, 35 times to each individual, 130 times in the whole game. All right? They need some time to recover. This is why teams do not practice on Mondays. I don't know if you knew that or not. What teams do, they give players Mondays off, and a lot of teams give the players Tuesdays off as well. And the reason they do that is that on Mondays, the players are usually in the training room, in a whirlpool. If they're not in there, or a jacuzzi, if they're not in there after the game, that is, they're there the next day at the facility getting treatment to, if it's deep tissue massages, if they're in a whirlpool or sauna or whatever the case may be. They're in there because they are trying to allow their bodies to recover from the trauma that they've been subjected to the day before. Remind you, the National Football League says that they are concerned about player safety. I'm just going to use this area too. There's other areas I can go into to illustrate the hypocrisy of the league. One I'm going to touch when we talk about Lamar in just a moment. But the National Football League, who is so concerned about player safety, so concerned about the health and the long-term effects of their players down the road, you know what they do, folks? They schedule a game on Thursday night. Now, mind you, these are guys who just, 3 days earlier had the equivalency of 30 to 35, 10 to 15 mile an hour car crashes with no metal surrounding them, with no steel surrounding them, basically body to body. And the reason that they do that is certainly not out of concern for player safety, certainly not out of concern for the long-term effects of this on the players in the league. They do this for one reason and one reason only, and that is to, you guessed it, make money. You see, the National Football League has television contracts. Thursday Night Football last season was on Amazon Prime. Prior to that, it was on NFL Network and CBS. They split it up. So they are making money off of these games, and this is why they schedule a game every Thursday night, even though they know, trust me, better than what you or I know, even though they know the cause and effect of what happens to their players by having such a quick turnaround. So that's just one example of the hypocrisy of the National Football League. That's why I call it the National Hypocrisy League. There are so many other examples I can give you, but for time purposes, I'm not going into all of this. It's not really germane to the topic here right now anyway, because I want to talk about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, for those of you who do not know, is the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, was the MVP of the NFL in 2019, was drafted into the NFL in 2018 out of Louisville by the Ravens with the last pick in the first round of the draft in 2018, and developed into one of the star players, one of the faces of the league, if you will, in the NFL because of his amazing athletic skills to be able to run as well as pass the ball. So Lamar Jackson, rookie contract was up at the end of last season. Lamar Jackson went to the Ravens and he asked Ravens management for a fully guaranteed contract. Now, for those of you who do not know, there is only one player in the National Football League right now that has a fully guaranteed contract. Football players, NFL players, even though you can make the argument and make a pretty strong case for it that NFL football is the most dangerous of all the major sports that are played. The NFL is the only league where players' contracts are not fully guaranteed. I don't know if you knew that or not. MLB, fully guaranteed. NBA, fully guaranteed. NHL, fully guaranteed. Only one player in the National Football League has a fully guaranteed contract, and he received that last year, and that is the Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson. So Lamar Jackson, former MVP, Deshaun Watson was never an MVP, great, really good quarterback, never an MVP. Lamar Jackson, former MVP of the league, top 5 quarterback in the league in a lot of people's eyes, went to the Ravens organization and asked for a fully guaranteed contract. Deshaun Watson got $258 million. Lamar Jackson wanted a $260 million fully guaranteed contract. The Ravens turned him down. They said no. Right? They said no. So what they did, the NFL has something what they call a franchise tag. They put the franchise tag on him, and you can have an exclusive or a non-exclusive tag. They put the non-exclusive. Now, what the non-exclusive tag is this, is that any team could be free to then negotiate with you. And then what would happen is if they wanted to sign you, the Ravens had a right to match that contract. And if they didn't, then said team would have to trade the Ravens 2 number 1 draft picks to compensate them for this non-exclusive franchise tag quarterback. Now here, again, is another example of the hypocrisy of the NFL, because if you are an NFL fan, what is the thing that you hear the most? What do you hear no matter what city you live in, no matter how bad or how great your franchise is? It's this. Your front office, your ownership, your coaches, everything all the way down to the water boy. What do they say? We are dedicated to bring a winning team, a winning product to this fill-in-the-blank city. We're going to do all we can do for the fans of our fill-in-the-blank team to make this a championship team. You hear it from all of them. The most important position in the National Football League is quarterback. This is why you saw just here recently in the draft that was held on Thursday, why you saw teams jockeying for position and teams willing to trade draft picks to move up in the draft so that they can grab the quarterback that they covet, that they hope, key word, hope, because these guys that got drafted like Bryce Young, like C.J. Stroud, like Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, etc., that got drafted over the last couple of days or so, these are all question marks. Nobody knows exactly what they're going to do in the National Football League until they get there. And yet teams are willing to pay precious draft capital to move up in the draft in hopes of grabbing one of these guys and hoping that they'll become the next Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts or Aaron Rodgers, etc., etc. So the most important position in the National Football League is the position of the quarterback. Okay? Just told you how teams move up in the draft and trade and what have you to try to get unproven commodities that they hope will become stars. Lamar Jackson is a proven commodity, folks. As I said, he is a former MVP of the entire league. There are some circles will make the argument in some circles that he is one of the top 5 players at his position in the league. Whether you agree with that or not, even if you disagree, you have to admit that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So here you have a proven commodity at the most important position. And yet when the Ravens put the non-exclusive franchise tag on him, you would have thought that teams that were desperately needing a quarterback, including some of the ones that moved up in the draft to draft these unproven commodities on Thursday night and yesterday, you would have thought that those teams would have been beating his door down to try to get him on the team. Au contraire, the Frenchman said, though. Because there was not nary a team that even made a minuscule effort to go after Jackson. So here again is the hypocrisy, because on the one hand, these front offices tell their fan bases that we are all in. And we want you to be all in with us. We are dedicated to bringing a Super Bowl contender to fill in the blank city. And yet no teams made a move, including some teams last year that were in on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, like the Atlanta Falcons, like the Carolina Panthers, who, by the way, traded up with the Chicago Bears to get the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and they drafted Bryce Young out of Alabama, unproven commodity. But last year, Atlanta, Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, they were all in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, only to be outbid by the Cleveland Browns. If you've been a regular listener to this show, you heard me talk about Washington, the position there. What you have to understand, folks, the landscape of the NFC, which is the conference that the Washington Commanders are in, this conference, if you will, is so quarterback average that had the Washington Commanders traded for Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens would not have met the contract offer that Washington made, Washington right now immediately would be a Super Bowl contender in the NFC. Because if you look, remember, quarterback is the most important position. If you look at the landscape of quarterbacks in the National Football Conference, you've got Jalen Hurts, who's the best quarterback there. Arguably, some thought should have been the MVP of the league last year. Would have been the MVP of the Super Bowl last year had the Eagles won, because even though the Eagles won, Jalen Hurts had a better game than Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. If you look at that conference, there's not a lot there, folks. Washington has a better than average defense. Washington has a very good running back. Washington has an outstanding wide receiver by the name of Terry McLaurin, and they addressed their offensive line in free agency. So if you don't put Lamar Jackson there, former MVP, that vaults the Washington Commanders right up to top or near the top as far as Super Bowl contenders are in the NFC. The Atlanta Falcons, who, by the way, as we said, were in on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes last year, they have Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder was a rookie last year, drafted out of Cincinnati, that was just so-so last year as a quarterback. The Atlanta Falcons were not interested in Deshaun Watson. And the reason that they were not interested in him is not because he can't play. Obviously, even Stevie Wonder can see that. But here's where the hypocrisy plays in, folks. Remember, we're dedicated to bringing a championship to this city, and we will do whatever we can to ensure our fan base, our loyal fan base, that this front office and this coaching staff are all in to get a championship here to this city. With the exception of this, we're not going to give a guaranteed contract because you know why? We are more interested in control of players and controlling these players than we are of winning. So winning is not the only thing. Winning is not the top priority. The top priority, to quote the Janet Jackson song, is control. Is control. Because if Washington was really dedicated to winning, and I know that they were going through a ownership change, so let's take them out of the picture. If Atlanta was really committed to winning, then they would have made the move to get Lamar Jackson. So wanted to paint the picture of the hypocrisy for you. Now, why is it then did I say then Lamar Jackson exposed? I think that answers the question, how he exposed the hypocrisy. So how did he overcome it and be victorious? Well, he did it this way. There were many who were saying that Lamar Jackson needs to get an agent. He just needs to get an agent, hire an agent so he can know what other teams are saying and can make the deals for him and all that. He really doesn't know how to understand how to handle all of that, the finances, blah, 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 blah. That's what you heard a lot of on talk shows, be they on ESPN, NFL Network, Sirius XM stations. Whenever the subject of Lamar Jackson came up, inevitably, you were going to hear about how he needed an agent. Lamar Jackson, for those of you who do not know, does not have an agent. His mother negotiates his contract for him, and she's not an agent. Lamar Jackson just illustrated to you how he exposed it. This is how he was victorious over it, because he held out. He told the Ravens, no, I'm not going to sign a contract with you unless it's guaranteed. They refused to do so, so he was willing to hold out. He even wrote a farewell letter to the fans of Baltimore, basically. Now, that would have been difficult because the Ravens still control his rights, and they could franchise him next year, too. So he would have had to, in effect, sit out 2 seasons. But he never wavered from his stance. Despite all the noise that you heard about how he needed an agent can negotiate this for him and get this done. Lamar Jackson, the other day, signed with the Baltimore Ravens a contract for $225 million, of which $185 million is guaranteed. So, did he get a fully guaranteed contract? No, he didn't. But the majority of his contract that he signed for a 5-year deal is guaranteed. He would have never gotten that had he capitulated to the Ravens before. An agent, in all likelihood, wouldn't have gotten that for him because the agent would have been advising him to sign for whatever it is the Ravens are offering, which I guarantee you wouldn't have been, no pun intended, he wouldn't have got $185 million guaranteed. That I know for a fact. So not only did Lamar Jackson expose the hypocrisy of the league, but he was victorious over it as well. Now, I have some conflicted feelings about that because on the one hand, I'm glad he did expose it, and I'm glad he was victorious. But on the other hand, from a personal standpoint, as I sit in Cleveland, Ohio, and as a fan of the Browns, I was hoping that Tyler Huntley was going to be the Ravens quarterback this year. And just keeping it real. But the majority of me is glad because I am glad that not only did he expose the hypocrisy, not only was he victorious over the hypocrisy, but he also showed that a player does not necessarily need an agent to get the kind of contract that he feels he deserves. Because Lamar Jackson got $185 million over 5 years, fully guaranteed, without the help or the negotiation of any agent. So kudos to you, Lamar. And once again, the National Football League is exposed for the hypocrisy that it is. Wherever you're listening to this show, if you're a fan of the NFL, whatever city that you're listening to this in, just keep this in mind. Just think about it. You don't have to agree with me. Just think about this. Is my franchise that I support with my money buying tickets or buying merch, I support with my time by watching the games, by listening to the games, by reading stories about the team, by following the team, looking at their draft picks, so all the things that fans do. Is my team that I have put so much of this investment into in time and money and emotions, are they really all in like I'm all in? Just ask yourself that question. You don't have to agree with me, even though I've laid out some facts for you, but you don't have to agree with me that the National Football League is the most hypocritical sports league in the world. You don't have to agree with that, Tate. That's fine. But just ask yourself this question. Is the franchise that I root for, whatever that is, are they as all in as I, the fan, am? Because, see, you as a fan really can't do, the only thing that you can do, which is powerful, is you can boycott the team and not show up at the stadiums. Let them play the empty stadiums. But basically, that's all you have. All the power lies for change and to make the team into a championship type of team. All of that rests within ownership and the front office and coaching. Unfortunately, as much as you think that you may have an effect on that, you really don't as a fan. But again, I challenge you. Ask yourself, is my friend, the team that I love, that I root for, like I ask myself, I'm a fan of the Cleveland Browns. Are the Cleveland Browns really invested in winning a championship? Or are they just telling me this, but that's not their number one priority? You have to answer that same question for the team that you follow. And if the answer to that question is no, then you have to at least start to consider that despite what my franchise tells me, that's not what they really mean, which then means you're buying in to the take that they are dealing in hypocrisy. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. If you have a take on what we just talked about, please give us a call, especially if you have a different take. If you disagree with the take that I put out here, that'll be great. I'd love to hear from you. But I know that some of you that are sitting there at home, I know you have strong opinions on what I just said. So instead of sitting there and saying, well, yeah, they need to do this, or I believe this or that or the other, instead of doing that, call in and let's talk about it. 216-939-5087. I want to save this next topic. Let's see. This is 3:45. I want to save this next topic for the top of the next hour. So I'm going to skip it. And I'm going to go to my post-mortem on the Cleveland Cavaliers. I want to talk about Gianna Antetokounmpo, but I'm going to save that. We're going to do that in the second hour. So I'm going to skip that topic and jump to our take on the Cleveland Cavaliers and their early exit from the NBA playoffs. Cleveland Cavaliers this year won 51 games, were the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, improved by 7 wins in the loss column from last year, made the playoffs this season, as last year they didn't make the playoffs. They got to the play-in, but could not get it out of the play-in game, so therefore didn't make the playoffs. In the offseason, they made a blockbuster move by trading former first-round pick Colin Sexton, their first-round pick from last year's draft, Obachie from Kansas, and which proved to be this season the most improved player in the league because he won that award, Lowry Markkinen, along with 2 number 1 draft picks, to the Utah Jazz for Donovan Mitchell. Blockbuster deal took place back in September. Immediately vaulted the Cavs as a hot topic around the league. And it played out pretty successfully in the regular season. As I said, the Cavs won 51 games, 4th seed in the East, home court advantage in their first round series against the 5 seeds, the New York Knicks, who then promptly eliminated the Cavaliers from the playoffs in what's known as a gentleman's sweep, 4-1. So what happened? Most experts favored the Cavs going into the series. I unfortunately was right in my prediction. Well, actually I wasn't. If you were listening to this show a couple of weeks ago when we had Michael Regai on the first hour and we gave our analysis of the Cavs season and also their upcoming series with the Knicks, and I asked for his prediction on the series, and Regai said Cavs in 7, and I told him that day, I said that, Regai, welcome to the right side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from.
Hi there, Jeff. This is Jonathan calling from Hudson. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Jonathan. How are you?
Pretty good. Just to go over what you just said about the Lamar Jackson situation and so forth, and the NHL, the National Hypocrisy League, which we're referring to, the NFL. I would say right now that the Cleveland Browns and the division they're in have unique, in the sense that they have the top quarterbacks in that division with the signing of Lamar Jackson. Unfortunately, unlike you, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and I was hoping that they weren't going to get a deal done with Lamar Jackson. But here's the interesting thing. With what's been going on, I've been noticing that the Browns have been loading up a lot of for wide receivers in our division. And that's basically to help Deshaun Watson so he has all the offensive weapons. And do you feel with what the Browns are doing, this is going to help Deshaun Watson? And the most important thing is, do you still think the Browns will be be in a playoff caliber type of mode for the next few seasons? I'll let you speak now, Jeff.
Okay, well, let me address your question. Okay, so first of all, their first pick in the draft, as those who do not know, the Browns did not have a first round pick because that was traded last year to the Texans in the Deshaun Watson deal. And then they did not have a second round pick as they traded that to the Jets in the offseason to pick up a wide receiver. All right. So the Browns drafted with their first pick, they drafted Cedric Tillman. They traded for a wide receiver, Sean Moore, from the Jets in I think it was last month or so. Traded their second round pick. They drafted, as I said, Cedric Tillman, who has a lot of upside from Tennessee. He's not a burner. He's body type compared to Mike Evans that plays for Tampa Bay Bucks, type of guy that can go downfield. He's not a slow guy, but he's not Tyreek Hill. But he's that type of big receiver that you can throw the ball up to, similar to Mike Evans. And I don't want to put that tag on him because I don't like to compare unproven commodities to proven commodities, but that's who he reminds me of. So they can throw that jump ball, if you will, to him, and he can high point the ball and make those kinds of plays downfield. So to answer your question, yes, the Browns are trying to load up to bring as many weapons to Deshaun Watson as possible. Because one of the weak spots of the Browns last year was their receiving core. Basically, you had Amari Cooper, you had Donovan Peoples-Jones, and after that, there were a lot of question marks. David Njoku as the tight end had probably his best season, and looks like he's finally starting to live up to his potential. So to answer your question, I do believe that's why they drafted Cedric Tillman to give Watson more weapons, and then they went to address their weaknesses and the other picks by addressing their defensive line interior by drafting the kid out of Baylor, their pass rush by drafting the kid out of Missouri, and to bolster their offensive line. I think they got a potential steal, I should say, in the fourth round by drafting DeJuan Jones from Ohio State, the tackle, who gave up no sacks at all the entire season last year for Ohio State. 6'6", 370-pound offensive tackle. It's 38-inch vertical. There's videos of him dunking basketballs when he was in high school. The knock on him is his weight. Can he keep his weight under control? So they did all of that to bolster an offense, to give Deshaun Watson as many weapons as possible, to bolster their offensive line, to bring this kid, as I said, DeJuan Jones in here under the tutelage of Bill Callahan, one of, if not the best offensive line coaches in the league, to enhance their offense. So that's number one. Number two, if Deshaun Watson, and I think he will, if Deshaun Watson reverts or returns to the 2020 form that we saw of Deshaun Watson, where he threw for over 4,400 yards and was the leading passer in the NFL that year on a team that finished 4-12. So if you get that version of Deshaun Watson back, then yes, you look in this division, you've got Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, you've got Lamar in Baltimore, you got Watson here, and then you got Kenny Pickett over in Pittsburgh, which, he's not yet in that echelon of quarterbacks that I just mentioned. So that'll be the key. As a matter of fact, the whole Brown season hinges on Deshaun Watson returning to form. That is what they're going to need. And so with that in mind, they went out to get these weapons to help facilitate that.
Okay. Jeff, here's something interesting. I don't know if this was a rumor, or did you hear this the other day? Is this true, or is this just a rumor that was made up about Antonio Brown joining the Baltimore Ravens?
No, I haven't heard about that.
That's not true.
That's not true. I haven't heard that at all. Now, they did sign Odell Beckham Jr., but Antonio Brown, before Antonio Brown ever plays football again, if he ever plays football again, Antonio Brown needs to get help for Antonio Brown.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't think the Ravens, given the kind of organization that they are, that's not that would be out of character for them.
I would think so too, because he would be, if he did join the Baltimore Ravens, that would be like a cancer on the Baltimore Ravens. He would disrupt that team so much. And so maybe it was one of those, the rumor where I heard it from, Jeff, was from ESPN, so maybe it was just a rumor, and we'll just have to wait and see. But I can't see the type of character and organization that the Baltimore Ravens have, that they would do something like that. So I don't think that's true. So we'll have to wait and see, okay?
Well,
Thank you very much for taking my call, and I appreciate your intake on what's going to happen and so forth. And like you said before, Jeff, the National Hypocrisy League, that is what they are. They're NFL. So take care. Talk to you later.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for your call. So yeah, that would be out of character, but never say never. You know, I doubt very seriously that the Ravens would do that, but you never say never, because stranger things than that have happened. And thank you for your call, Jonathan. So I want to do this post-mortem on the Cavs, and then when we do that, we're going to take our break, and we'll be back in our next hour. But going into the series, I said I picked the Knicks in 6. I figured that New York will win game 1 due to the Cavs, majority of the Cavs players having lack of experience in the playoffs. I thought that the newness of it all, they wouldn't be able to overcome that. Sadly, I was correct. I figured that the Cavs would win games 2, and then New York would win games 3 and 4 in New York. All that followed suit, and the reason for that was that I was very doubtful about the Cavs winning on the road. The Cavs were not a good road team all season. Yes, they were 20-21, which was below 500. But if you look at their record against teams that were 500 or better on the road, they were very lackluster. So what happened in New York last weekend didn't surprise me, although the effort or lack thereof last Friday was a shock to only score 79 points. Where I was wrong is that I thought Cleveland would win game 5. We know that they didn't. So what happened? Well, the playoffs have a way of exposing flaws that you've had all year. And the Cavs offense, even though they won 51 games, was an offense that basically ran high screen and roll for the entire season. Bringing their bigs like Jared Allen or Evan Mobley out to run high screen and roll with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell to free them up to get them the room to shoot. And the reason for that is that they did not have shooters to spread the floor, and having the 2 bigs in the lineup kind of clogged up the middle. So they had to run this kind of offense. And for the regular season, it was successful. The Cavs were the number 1 defensive team all season, and that showed up even in the series, in the playoffs, even though they got gentlemen swept, as we said, 4-1. So what happened? Tom Thibodeau is one of the best coaches in the NBA devising defenses to stop what is your strength. And that's exactly what he did. He basically took the high screen and roll away from the Cavs offense, therefore making it difficult for them to score. And this is why you saw that the Cavs in only one game only had over 100 points in one game in the series. So it was not the Cleveland defense. The Cleveland defense basically held the Knicks to 99 points a game and 43% shooting. So the offense was the problem. As long as Isaac Okoro or Lamar Stevens or Dean Wade or Ricky Rubio were on the floor, the Knicks were not going to guard them when they were at the three-point line. They could live with the fact that even though I think Isaac Okoro had a decent series, they could live with the fact, even Karis LeVert, they could live with the fact of them making occasional threes. They took away the strength, the staple of the Cleveland offense, if you will, And that's why the offense stagned down and became bogged down, rather, and became stagnant. Right? That's one. The most glaring reason, though, in my opinion, that the Cavs lost this series is that their bigs were thoroughly dominated by Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein. And Mitchell Robinson is an outstanding offensive rebounder. I'm not going to take this away from him, but Mitchell Robinson is not Moses Malone, folks. Even though if you watched this series, you would have thought he was the reincarnation of Moses Malone. And Isaiah Hartenstein is not Kevin McHale as far as rebounding is concerned. But again, watching this series, you would have thought you were looking at vintage Kevin McHale on the boards. The problem with the Cavs, especially their bigs, is that it's twofold. Number one, Evan Mobley is 21 years old and has not grown into his body yet. So he's very easily be able to be physical and pushed around underneath the basket. Right? But, and I can somewhat expect that, and I somewhat understand that because I realize that he's not finished growing into his body yet. And he did at least compensate for that by playing outstanding defense on Julius Randle this series, making Julius Randle basically, after the first quarter of game one, a non-factor in the series. Knicks all-star Julius Randle. The Knicks expose the finesse of the Cleveland big men, which if you want to read between the lines, you don't have to. I'll come right out and say it. Expose the softness of the Cleveland big men. Jared Allen in this series might as well have been Claude Rains or Ralph Ellison. Now, if you don't get the reference there, Claude Rains played the Invisible Man in a movie. One of Ralph Ellison's greatest books was The Invisible Man. Jared Allen did not show up for this series except for game two. Jared Allen, folks, was out-rebounded by Josh Hart, who is a guard, in the deciding game 5 Wednesday night. Jared Allen was pushed around, taunted by, and dominated by Mitchell Robinson. Jared Allen showed that he's soft. He's finesse. And I'm not even just talking physically, folks. I'm talking about mentally. The Cavs were exposed in this series as a team that's not mentally tough. Don't believe it because I say it. Listen to their own quotes. These were the quotes that came out of the mouths of the players of the Cleveland Cavaliers on Thursday as they did their exit interview press conferences. Jared Allen. This is Jared Allen, your last year All-Star center, who, by the way, has had previous playoff experience with when he was in Brooklyn. His comments were this. He said, not Jeff on the right side, not, random fan somewhere, here in Cleveland saying these comments. Jared Allen said this, and I quote, he said that even for me, the lights might have been too bright. In other words, what he's saying is the moment was too big, might have been too big for him. So, in other words, what I'm reading into that, folks, is that what he's saying is that I was not mentally tough enough.
Yep.
You're a veteran. These were his comments, but he was not the only one. He was not the only one who said this. Because, and listen, before I go to that, this is what kind of galls me too about this whole thing, is that Mitchell Robinson, after game 3, in the media, basically clowned Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. He said, and I quote, that they looked like they had the jitters being in the garden. That's what Mitchell Robinson said. Mitchell Robinson was on the court laughing at them. Laughing. And you mean to tell me that you do not have enough gumption. You don't have enough professionalism. You don't have enough pride as an NBA player to gird yourself up and try to take it to a guy that's basically laughing at you and taunting you and telling you in the media that you look like you're scared? Because that's what he was saying. But it wasn't just Jared Allen. Isaac Okoro. Isaac Okoro, Cavs forward. This is what he said, and I quote. He said the physicality gap was huge between the regular season and the playoffs. I don't see, before I say this next thing that he said, let me just say this, because a lot of talk here in town was blaming Cavs coach J.B. Bickerstaff, and we'll get to him in a minute. He needs to get fired. He's not making the adjustments. I'm going to address that here shortly. But listen to what Isaac Okoro, his own player, said, for all those who said that JB didn't make adjustments. He said, I don't think you could adjust physicality. That's what Isaac Okoro saying. Isaac Okoro, Cavs forward, said, I'll say it for you. I'll say it for you again. He said that the physicality was a huge gap, or huge difference rather, between the regular season and the playoffs, and I don't think you could adjust physicality. You just have to have it. That's what he said. You can't adjust physicality. He says you just have to have it. This is what Isaac Okoro said, who, by the way, had a good series in my opinion. Then his final comment was, you have got to have toughness. It's a mental thing, Okoro said. Those are some very revealing comments. Not coming from a fan. This is coming from a player on the team who said, you can't adjust physicality. You can't adjust mental toughness, physical toughness. You just have to have it. It is a mental thing. So we're talking about mental toughness and physical toughness. Now listen, I'm not talking about going out, throwing elbows, starting fights and all that. But I'm talking about establishing yourself, making the other team feel you. Now I get it. Mitchell Robinson is an outstanding rebounder, but making this guy look like the second coming of Moses Malone, come on. That is a lack of toughness, both physically and mentally. Jared Allen came out of his own mouth, said that for me, even the lights were too bright. Jared Allen in this series played the softest funeral music, folks. I dubbed him Cottonelle in this series. That's how soft he played. Not just physically. Again, there are a lot of fake tough guys in the league. I'm talking about mentally tough. Where was the mental toughness at? How do you come out in an elimination game, game 5 on Wednesday, how do you come out in that game where midway through the first quarter I could tell that they weren't going to win the game? Just by their bodies. In game 4, Jeff Van Gundy, calling the game for ABC, was talking about how bad the Cavs' body language looked. Folks, that's an example of a lack of mental and physical toughness.
Who's responsible for that?
Well, these are professional players. They should not have to have somebody to motivate. You are a professional basketball player with your season on the line. It should not be up to somebody else to have to motivate you to go out and do what you know you have to do. Shouldn't be that. These aren't high school players. They're not junior high school players. This is not Charles Elliott or John F. Kennedy High School and you got 13 and 14. These are grown men. Grown men. If you're depending on your coach, your head coach or one of your assistant coaches to get you mentally prepared, then I question whether you can ever be mentally prepared. You are a professional athlete. You cannot go into a venue like Madison Square Garden and be jittery and be afraid to play bad. This is basketball. You can't go in there like that. Finally, Ricky Rubio. Ricky Rubio said his comments. He said that he felt as though the Cavs had a better team than the Knicks. He said that being as the fact that they played, 4 games in the regular season and 5 in the playoffs, and New York was 7-2 against them. But anyway, he said that he felt the Cavs had a better team, and talent-wise, especially the first 5, just on sheer talent alone, yeah, they did. But he said that even though we had the physically better team, they just wanted it more. This came out of his mouth. They just wanted it more. So Ricky, Jared, Evan, Darius, Donovan, Karis, and the rest of you guys, how do you allow another team to want it more than you? That's internal. That's in you. Oh, by the way, rebounding, that's effort. That's hustle. That's desire. That's mental toughness. That's on you as a professional. I'm not talking about college players or high school players that, need to get the rah-rah speech and all of that. You guys are professional athletes getting paid huge amounts of money. And you don't have it within you. The other team desires it more than you. Then that, you know what, Ricky? That's on your team then. That's on your teammates. If you said they wanted it more than us, what you're saying is we were not mentally tough enough to advance in this series because the other team out-hustled, which they did. You didn't have to tell me, Ricky. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. Well, my 1.5 eye. Left eye I can't see so well out of. But I even saw that. Yeah, I could see that. Even Stevie Wonder could see, yeah, they wanted it more. You know why? They outworked you. They out-hustled you. They out-efforted you. They out-toughed you. That's on you. That's not on the coach. That's on you as an individual professional athlete. Now, let me address J.B. Bickerstaff. There are a lot of people in Cleveland that want to run him out of town. Okay, my answer to them is, who are you going to bring in here? Ime Udoka is coaching the Houston Rockets. You want Nick Nurse? Nick Nurse won the championship because he had Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson got hurt in the series. Toronto just fired him. So who are you going to bring in here? Mike Malone? Mike Malone is with the Denver Nuggets right now, and they may go to the finals. Could JB have done some other things? Yes. Could he have maybe developed his bench during the regular season? Maybe, but then again, who's he going to develop? They're talking about the adjustments that he could have made during this series. What adjustments? Who? Dean Wade? Ricky Rubio? Lamar Stevens? You know what the Knicks did when Lamar Stevens got on the floor? They did not guard him. That's personnel. Now, here's where the Cavs made a mistake. Talk about lack of playoff experience. Talk about lack of being there. Talk about all you want to talk about. Mm-hmm. They let go of Kevin Love for nothing. Do you know that in the closeout game for Wednesday against the Milwaukee Bucks, who, oh, by the way, had the best record in the NBA and were favored by many, including yours truly, to win the NBA title this year. You know what Kevin Love did in that closeout game? He had 15 points and 12 rebounds against Milwaukee, 5 3-pointers. There was another game in that series. He had 18 and 12. What did Dean Wade have? D Wade didn't have 15 points and 12 rebounds for the whole series. They talk about, well, his defensive deficiencies. Okay? You couldn't score. You don't think Kevin Love could have knocked some three-pointers down? You think he could have rebounded some? Since, obviously Jared Allen and Evan Mobley weren't. And again, I'm not trying to make Kevin Love out to be what he was 4 or 5 years ago. He's not. But I tell you what, I would have rather had him in this series than Dean Wade. Than some of the other people that they were bringing in. So I don't know what they're going to do. Because they don't have draft picks to trade. If they sign a free agent like Nikola Vukovic from the Chicago Bulls, so by the way, is a free agent that can really help this team because he's a 5, which is a center, who can shoot, spread the floor, and he can rebound, and he has an edge to him. But you're going to have to sign him as a free agent, which means you'll probably have to go over the luxury tax to do that. But Dan Gilbert has shown in the past that he's willing to do that. Or maybe you try to get Jonas Valanciunas in here from New Orleans, another 5 that can shoot threes and can rebound and plays with some physicality. Kobe Altman's press conference on yesterday, he kept talking about the core 4, the core 4, the core 4. But in order for them, there's 2 things that's going on here, folks, that are fans of the Cavs that you need to know. One is the clock is ticking on Donovan Mitchell. Because Donovan Mitchell's contract expires in 2 years. And if he doesn't sign an extension, either next year or before the 24-25 season, then you're going to have to trade him. Because you cannot afford to let him walk like LeBron James and Kyrie Irving walked and you got nothing in return for them. But in order to keep him here, and he's not at fault either. I'm going to get to him in a minute too. But in order to keep him here, you're going to have to surround him with something that will make him want to stay. Now, we know that, at least we hope, that Evan Mobley is going to develop. And that eventually... Welcome to the right side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from.
This is Todd, Jeff. Calling from Ward 1 section of Cleveland, Ohio.
Hey, Todd. What's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind is what was on your mind, but I caught you in the middle of your thought as you were expressing it. So can you finish what you were saying, then I'll tell you exactly what I was going to say about it.
No, I was going to say, if they don't surround Donovan Mitchell with anything within the next year and a half or so, then in all likelihood, they're going to have to trade him because he's probably not going to re-sign, and you don't want him to walk and get nothing. That was the thought that I was on. I was going to get to my thoughts on how he got outplayed this series by Jalen Brunson, but no, go ahead.
The regular season competition between these 2 teams, of which there were 4, was a clear indicator how the playoffs were going to go. It was clear. They played them 4 times. The Knicks handled them 3 out of the 4. Okay? And as much as I've heard people complain about the head coach, this looks like a strength and conditioning issue to me.
Exactly.
This is Derek. I think his last name is Milner. He's a strength and conditioning coach. And whoever the shooting, all of them are shooting coaches just by virtue of them being coaches. The whole coaching staff. But there's one person that's responsible for those dudes being able to gun it. And they took way too many 3-pointers in this series for them to be trying to seriously. Let me back up a second. For as many 3-pointers as they took, they could have been taking the same amount in 2-point shots and risking getting fouled and being at the foul line and making the equivalent of what they could have made in 3-pointers because their 3-point shooting is so bad. So the strength and conditioning coach and who's ever coaching those dudes on their outside shots is really the problem, because the plays were okay to me. The plays were okay to me. Okay.
Well, Todd, who's gonna and I agree with you 100% there. I think they need a sniper on this team. They need a Kyle Korver type guy. But let me ask you this question. I'm curious your thought on this. I agree with you, strength and conditioning, especially physically. But who's gonna be the strength and conditioning coach to strengthen their mental toughness on this team?
They got coaches.
I don't have an answer for that, to tell you the truth, Jeff, and I'm not going to attempt to answer that.
Right, there's a rhetorical question. That's why I asked, because that comes from within. That is within those players' motivation. You are a professional athlete. I don't want to hear about, this coach and that coach. You are a pro, Jared Allen. And you said that the lights, even for me, the lights were too big. What coach is going to change that for you? That's within you.
Well, they do have mental health coaches, and I got to interrupt because they do have mental health coaches on the team. And as athletes, they do go through a lot. Excuse me, go ahead.
No, I was thinking out loud. I didn't mean to interrupt you. When you said they had mental health coaches, I was like, are they coaching? But go ahead, I'm listening.
I mean, hey, this is one thing that they have to step up on, but there are sports psychologists that are on these teams because, of course, outside of basketball and everything that has to do inside of basketball, they go through a lot, and there are a lot of mental breaks that go on with them. In the play of game, in the area of gameplay, leading up to that, and their family lives and everything counts when it comes to that, and it cannot be discounted. And that's what those coaches are there for. And do they need to step up? They absolutely need to step up next year.
Well,
we saw Kevin Love go through this all season, and it's not just a thing of them getting rid of Kevin Love because he didn't serve a good purpose or value to us anymore. But he was what do I want to call it? He was heavy on us as far as his mental health breaks. He went through tons of them during his last year with us. So that place.
Ask you a question.
Yeah, I'm listening.
I want you to go back to something you just said.
Okay.
You said everything counts. Those were your exact words, and then you said nothing can be discounted.
Absolutely.
Well, if nothing can be discounted, then they can't be managed. Because in
That's not
everybody's
true.
life, something has to be discounted.
That's not true. Did you hear about the story of Andrew Wiggins and what he went through? And he had to step away from basketball in its entirety in order for him to get his situation straightened out. Well, everything counts.
You have to discount doesn't mean disregard. Discount means that you lessen the level of to what degree it counts. Everybody has to discount something in their existence. Whatever age you may be, whatever the level of your quality of life may be, everything can't count on the same thing.
Yeah, but not everything is the same. Just like us, we're not basketball players. We don't have to deal with the public. We don't have to deal with the public. We do not have to deal with sportscasters and people that put images on us. We don't have to deal with the media. We don't have to deal with coaches and family included, and that can be heavy all in one too. Like, we don't have that burden of dealing with all of that and then going out and doing your job.
The only thing I'll say is, to my knowledge, this be
I'm just saying, I play sports, so it's not that easy.
I'm not in the locker room. To my knowledge, though, none of those other players were dealing with the issues that Kevin Love. Speaking of Kevin Love, Todd, you mentioned the one game that they won. You know why they won that game? And again, I'm not saying if they had him, they would have won the series. That one game they won was back towards the beginning of the season. Kevin Love had 8 threes in that game. They beat the Knicks. It was the first time they played them here in Cleveland. All I'm saying is the Cavs, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, lack mental toughness.
After game one, and let's be clear on this before I say this, okay? All of those dudes are not in the limelight as much as some other dudes. There are dudes on that team that people will walk past them and just be like, that's just some tall dude. They wouldn't know that dude was a Cavs. They're not getting hounded. They're not getting stalked. All right? There's not people constantly criticizing them on the level that they can't just disregard them. There's a couple of them that had that issue, but most of them don't. So let's be clear on that. But after game one of the playoffs, Darius Garland said in an open interview be able to say after an interview that maybe we laid down, that means you laid down.
Exactly, and that's why Todd, that's why and again, that's why I said this is not Jeff on the right side or Todd calling in on the right side saying these words came out of their mouths. That's why I read the Isaac Okoro quote. That's why I read the Jared Allen quote. That's why I read the Ricky Rubio quote. They themselves, basically, if you read into what they're saying, Isaac Okoro said that you can't adjust the physicality. That it's a mental thing. Ricky Rubio said that they wanted it more than us. Jared Allen said that the lights were even too bright for me. If you read into that, what they are saying is that were not, for whatever reason, we were not mentally prepared for this series.
Did you just say read into it? There was nothing to read into.
Exactly.
He was telling you straight up.
Straight up.
We laid down. They wanted it more than we did. That's not complicated. Oh, here's one after game 4. After game 4 of the playoffs. Darius goes, well, I thought our defense would play well. They were smoking y'all on the boards.
Yeah.
Man, please. Do you think? I'm a Cavs fan. I really believe that the general manager or the team president got it right. We can keep most of this team together. That's what he said. That's true. That is true. But I mean, let's be realistic, man. You couldn't score 80 points in a playoff game
against the Knicks.
You scored the least amount of points of any team in all of the season, regular and playoffs. That's a team that just wasn't with it. I played sports too. Okay?
Todd,
I went to school. I went to college on a scholarship too. I understand these things.
Todd, even the San Antonio Spurs and the Houston Rockets didn't have a game all season where they scored under 80 points, and those teams are horrible.
Did you see how many dudes were out for the Miami Heat?
Right.
Man, when the Greek freak was out, those dudes' eyes lit up like, boy, that shouldn't have happened to y'all. And they went after Milwaukee, boy.
Yeah, they did.
They got that in them yet.
They did. And Mike Budenholzer is going to be the fall guy for that. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's just obvious. Now, can it be salvaged? Yes. And maybe getting slapped in the face like this, the way they did. Basically, by themselves, and they allowed the Knicks to come into the lunchroom, take their lunch money from them, and they take their date that they took to the homecoming dance, they snatched her and they took her home. So maybe having that happen and having to think about it all the whole off season. You heard Donovan Mitchell's comments about letting this stuff resonate with you the whole off season. Caris LeVert basically said the same thing too. Maybe that will change them. Hopefully it will next year. But to me, JB is the easy scapegoat, because if you say he wasn't here, okay, you fire him. You bring whoever you want to name in here, bring him in here. The thing that was wrong with them as far as the mental toughness still comes from the inside. You as a professional, and again, I'm drawing a line between college, high school and college and the pros. High school and college, yeah, you need those kind of coaches. As a matter of fact, in college basketball, who do you hear about most? There's a coach. It's Calipari, Coach K when he was at Duke, Tom Izzo, Pitino. Exactly. They are the ones who the focus on the program is. In the NBA, the focus is on the players.
I have 2 more comments on this.
Okay, go ahead.
Wait till you see by the end of the summer. They're going to have pictures because those dudes are constantly on the internet. Wait till you see the difference of Evan Mobley and even his brother who coming off the bench. He's going to still be on the team. He might be in the G League. Wait till you see the difference of what they look like by the end of the summer than what they look like today. Those dudes going to look significantly different across the shoulder.
I believe that too.
That's going to happen, man. And UConn would have beat both those teams. I say UConn would have beat the Knicks and the Cavs.
No, I ain't gonna go that far, but no, I hear you. You know what? I'm glad you brought up Isaiah Mobley. The Cavs need a 3-and-D. There's some talk about Nikola Vucevic. Well, actually, he's a 5, and Valanciunas is a 5. But there's some talk about Robert Covington. There's some talk about Royce O'Neal. because of the relationship between him and Donovan Mitchell. But you might have that guy on the team right now in Isaiah Mobley. Just remember that. He might be that guy. Not saying he is, because he hasn't shown anything. You know, he's been a G League player, but he might be that guy. You just never know.
Just look on the internet by August. Them dudes, that strength and conditioning coach is like, as soon as that season over, he went over there to those dudes and said, look, I'm going to get y'all together because I need to keep this job. I know y'all got it. I know y'all got it in you. Jared might be gone.
Well, and that's the thing. They're talking about who they could trade to get in the wing, because the Cavs desperately need a wing that can shoot the three, that can play. What they need, Todd, they need a guy that averages 12 to 15 points a game. They can get you 7 rebounds and can defend. And can shoot close to, let's say, like 38, 39, close to 40% from three-point. That will open up everything in the middle. And Jared Allen might be the guy that you have to move, because they're not going to trade Garland.
There's nobody else to move.
And they're not going to trade Mobley or Mitchell. So they're going to move somebody. It's got to be him.
Yep. Have you got to the Browns yet? I came in like 5 minutes before I called. I started listening.
No, go ahead. I haven't talked about them. Well, just a little. I talked about, the draft pick, DeJuan Jones from Ohio State, why he dropped to where he dropped. But, if under the tutelage of Callahan, because, he was second team All-American this year. And then the reason that he dropped so far is not that he can't play or doesn't have the talent, but the concern about him is his weight, because he weighs 370, and their concern is he going to eat his way? Yeah, is he going to eat his way out of the league? And they're concerned about him ballooning to 400. But if they can get his weight down to 350, then you got a steal there at the position they draft. Because talent wise, and this is just not me saying this. This Mel Kiper and others say that he was a late first round, early second round draft pick.
What's your co-host's name?
Marie.
Hi, Marie.
Producer.
I didn't catch your name.
Well, she's a producer. She's a producer also.
Oh, she's a producer. Okay. So he wasn't the one that concerned me the most. There's no better offensive lineman coach in the league than what we have. There might be a couple that are equal, but there's only a couple that are equal.
Right.
So he couldn't have gone any place better than Cleveland. And he's got plenty of time to get together because the offensive line is so deep. Okay? My concern was not him. That wasn't the pick that bothered me. the pick that bothered me is this dude from Missouri, this edge rusher, this guy. I'm like, man, not just him. They gotta do something about that receiving room. Man, they got like 9 dudes in the receiving room. You know that
means somebody's not going to be here. That's what that means. So in a way, that's good, because they're doing that to try to give Watson the weapons. But yeah, my concern about McKenzie, that's the guy from Missouri they drafted, is the knock on him is that some games, he plays like King Kong, and other games he plays like Jane. And so his thing is motivation. Here we go again, with the whole mental aspect of the game. There's a guy really want to play all the time, because they said against who I think was Alabama this year, it was either Alabama or Georgia, that he had 3 sacks in the game. He had a big game against Tennessee, and then he played South Carolina, and you wonder how he was even on scholarship.
Yep. There's that, and you must have seen him play, because I particularly watched that team this year. So when they picked him, I was like, I don't know about that one. I don't care how far back in the draft it is. I don't know about that one. But there's a guy that's on the team right now. He's a receiver. He got hurt in the preseason, okay? And if you don't know who he is, write the name down. His name's Isaiah Weston. You know what I'm talking about, Jeff?
No, I'm not familiar with him.
Isaiah Weston was on the team. He's on the roster right now, okay? When you get a chance, he's out of northern Iowa. And he got hurt. He was a steal last year, but he got hurt. Isaiah is 6'3", runs a 4.3, solid 4.3, like maybe low 4.3, okay? And to the regular season. That dude right there, that's on the roster right now, is probably gonna be an unanticipated by the general public sensation this year. Remember that name, Isaiah Weston.
Because you know, Todd, that's what they're hoping Cedric Tillman is going to be. They're hoping he's going to turn into Mike Evans.
Well, he's just as good as Bell. He's just as good as Bell. His hands are good. He's taller. He's a little bit faster than Bell, and he can get it done, man.
Well, yeah, before Cedric Tillman got injured last year, I mean, you know, he's having a big year. He's not a speed guy. He's not slow either, but he's not Tyreek Hill. But what he is, he's a big receiver that you can throw the ball downfield and basically play basketball with. Had him go up and high point the ball. So that's what they're hoping.
He only dropped 5 passes.
Right. Yeah. So.
And dependable.
Yeah. So we'll see. I don't know. It's hard for me to get real optimistic about the Browns, because every time I do, something happens. So what's interesting on this, and I'll let you go on this because we're gonna go to break. What's interesting about this, Todd, is that both the NBA team and the NFL team, present and future, all revolve around the guy who wears number 4 on each team, respectively. We need number 4 on the Cavs to basically become Anthony Davis without the injuries. I think that's what his ceiling is. And we need number 4 on the Browns to return to what he was when he was in Houston.
Cedric Tillman's jersey was number 4. I'm just messing with you. Never mind. His jersey, Tennessee, was number 4.
Yeah, I know.
He might need a different thing.
And he won't be wearing it here, but I hear what you're saying.
Probably not. Probably not.
All right, Todd. Thanks for calling.
Reduce the debt ceiling. Reduce the services. We'll get it done. I know you're coming to it. In conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
You're listening to the right side. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back at you. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about Gianna Antetokounmpo and his interesting comments that he made after Game 5 of their playoff series against the Miami Heat. And we're going to look at it in the perspective of a sports context, but also a life context as well. We'll be right back with you.
We won't be long at all because our time is short.
4:36.
Yeah, so real quick, I just want to tell you guys that if you're a family member or friend have been affected by violence, know that violence can affect all parts of your life, sometimes in ways you can't see. It can affect the way you eat, sleep, cause you to lose focus, feel angry, afraid, or even use drugs or drink it as a way to escape. But we're here to tell you that violence doesn't have to keep hurting, and you can change your life starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life because today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They offer services for food, clothes, safety, emotional support, and a whole lot more. So listen, do not let violence control you. You can break free, and TRC can help. Give them a call at 216-644-5487. They will come to you wherever you are. They are free. They are 24/7 and confidential. So look, if you want out and don't know where to start, call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center is here to help 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Again, they can give you the tools to rebuild your life and your health. They can rebuild your life and your health. Call the Trauma Recovery Center, 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center of Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children. And just really quick, you guys, I just want to send a shout out to Philip Downing. Born in 1891. I'm not sure when he was born, but he is the inventor of the mailbox as a solution to visiting the post office every time he wanted to mail a letter. Downing invented the first outdoor mailbox that featured a hinged door that kept the letter secure, but also kept out of the rain and snow. Downing also has a patent for improvements on the street railway system, allowing them to switch automatically, and a lot more. And then One more. George T. Sampson, the inventor of the clothes dryer. So Sampson developed the automatic clothes dryer that used a series of suspension rods over a specifically designed stove to dry clothes. His design was used up until the late 1930s when the use of gas and electric dryers began. Also invented by him. Prior to his inventions, clothes were hung over the top of an open flame, but often left clothing with a smell of smoke and often some burns. So those are your Black History Facts of today. And now back to Jeff Doggett in the right side.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie. Real quick before we get into our next topic, just want to give you all a lineup on our station here. We're on 6 days out of the week. Did you know that? We're on live 6 days out of the week. On Sundays, you can hear rebroadcast, you can hear jazz on Sundays. But just very quickly, on Mondays, we call it Motor Mind Day Monday. We have Black Anthology from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's hosted by Coffee. We have Hustle and Wax Flow from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Hosted by Gerald Saloon and also Hustle Carter. Then it's from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m. We have Drag Racing, the Ultimate Sport, Kudra, from 5:30 p.m. to 6:45 p.m. hosted by husband and wife couple Ken and Denise Kennedy. Then on then we have More Than Meets the Eye, and that shows from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., and that's hosted by Noble Khan Bey and Lilo Ellie. Then on Tuesdays, we have the theme on Tuesday is Testimony Tuesday. We have Body Talk from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., hosted by Al Bridges. Then we have the Today's Gospel Music Show from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., hosted by the Reverend Doctor. On Wednesday, we have House Party Wednesday, Lupus Straight Up with CC, hosted by Celia and JJ. Then we have Speakeasy Radio Show from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., hosted by Ron Chilston. Mm-hmm. And then on Thursday, our theme is Tune Up Thursday. We have the Rap Show, RAP Radio Show, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., hosted by Ryan A. Polk, hence the RAP. Right. Then we have Solomon Park Radio Show from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., hosted by The Warrior, Solomon Park. On Friday, we have Fantastic Fridays. We have the FAN Radio Show from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., hosted by Gianna and Guy. Then we have Welcome to the BBW Show, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., hosted by Stacy Stacks. Then on Saturday, we have what we call Situation Saturdays. From 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we have Pumping It Up with Will, hosted by Will J. Childs. We have the Entertainment Plug from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., hosted by J-Rock and CC. Then from 1 to 3 p.m., we have Real Talk with Reese, hosted by Tanya Thomas. And then on 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., you have this show, The Right Side, hosted by yours truly. So you see we have an outstanding lineup of live shows throughout the week. Check them out. There's something for everybody there here on No Static Radio, Contemporary Talk, and so much more. WMDS on your FM dial. Now, real quick, let me just say these last two things about the topic we were talking about before the break. Donovan Mitchell cannot be outplayed by Jalen Brunson. Donovan Mitchell needed to be the best player on the floor. He wasn't. He admitted that. That can't happen again, especially in a series like that, and for Cleveland to win, and eventually for Cleveland to get where all Cavs fans are hoping that they get to one day, and that is that Evan Mobley has to become the best player on the team. I didn't say the leading scorer, but he has to be the best player on the team for them to get where they're going to get to. On Wednesday, not only did the Cleveland Cavaliers get eliminated from the NBA playoffs by the New York Knicks, as we just talked about prior to the break, But the biggest upset thus far of the NBA playoffs was the 8th seed in the East, the shorthanded Miami Heat, without Victor Oladipo, without their second leading scorer, Tyler Hero. A offensively challenged team all season, even when they were at full strength, upset the Milwaukee Bucks, who were the number one seed in the East, the number one overall seed in the NBA, had the best record in the NBA this year, predicted by many, including yours truly, to not only come out of the Eastern Conference, but to win the NBA title this year, 2 years removed from their last title. So that defeat sent shockwaves throughout the NBA. You know, the star of that series was not Gianna Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak, who missed 2.5 games in that series due to back injuries. Some even thought that Milwaukee might have been resting him, thinking that they could win the series without him. Boy, did they get sadly mistaken on that, because what happened was playoff Jimmy Butler showed up, and he showed up big time, especially in games 4 and 5, where he scored a team record 56 points in game 4 to power Miami past Milwaukee in game 4 to take a commanding 3-1 lead. He scored more points in the playoff game than any player in Heat history. Yes, that includes Dwayne Wade, Shaquille O'Neal, and LeBron James. Then in Game 5, he followed that up with a 42-point performance as the Heat won in overtime to, as I said, shock the NBA world, eliminate the Bucks, and move on to the second round, where the Heat will take on the New York Knicks starting tomorrow afternoon in Madison Square Garden. But even though that was a story, the main story, at least, or maybe the 1A story, perhaps is how it should be framed, in that series was the comments of Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Bucks all-world player, after Game 5, when he was asked a question by an AP reporter in his response. We're gonna play that for you now. I want you to hear the question. I want you to hear his response, and then we're gonna come back after the clip and talk about this. Talk about it from the standpoint of how what he said applies to life, sports rather, but also how it applies to life. So, Marie, can you play that clip for us?
Yes.
Over 50 years from 1971.
You view this season as a failure?
Oh, okay, because I'm not you asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay, do you get the promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something, towards a goal, right? Which is to get a promotion, to be able to take care of your family, to be able, provide the house for them or take care of your parents. You work towards a goal. It's not a failure. It's steps to success. You know, and if you've never, I don't want to make it personal. So there's always steps to it. You know, Michael Jordan played 15 years, won 6 championships. The other 9 years was a failure. That's what you're telling me. No, I'm answering your question. Yes or no? Okay, exactly. So why are you asking that question? It's a wrong question. There's no failure in sports. You know, there's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful. Some days you're not. Some days it's your turn. Some days it's not your turn. And that's what sports is about. You don't always win. Some other people's gonna win. And this year somebody else is gonna win. Simple as that. We're gonna come back next year, try to be better, try to build good habits, try to play better, not have 10 days stretch with play bad basketball. You know, and hopefully we can win a championship. So 50 years from 1971 to 2021 that we didn't win a championship, it was 50 years of failures? No, it was not. It was steps to it, you know, and we were able to win one. Hopefully we can win another one. You know, sorry that I didn't want to make it personal. because you asked me the same question last year, and last year I was in the right mind space to answer the question back, but I remember it.
Do you view this season as a failure?
Okay. So let me deal with this from a life perspective and from a sports perspective. From a life perspective, Giannis hit it out of the park, in my opinion. Because in life, you're going to have ups and downs. There's going to be days when everything is going your way and you're winning, if you will. And then there's going to be those days where everything doesn't go your way, where you're having what you may think is a bad day, but in reality, it's not a bad day. It's a character-building day. Because the days that challenge you, the tough times and the hard times that you have in life, these are moments and times in your life that build your character, that make and mold you into the person that you're going to be. You think about it, if you had sunshine every day in your life, you know what your life would be? It would be a desert. It's sunshine in the desert every day. And in the desert, it's dry, it's uninhabitable, there's nothing in there, there's no growth, there's nothing growing in the desert. It's just a dry, hot, empty place where nothing grows and nothing changes. But when there's some rain that comes in to your life, when rain comes in, even though you may not want the storm, even though you may not like the storm that you're going through, even though it may cause difficulties and problems, guess what happens when it rains? When it rains, that's where things grow. When it rains, that's how greenery comes in. When it rains, if you plant a seed in the ground, that rain feeds that seed, and then that seed begins to develop and begins to grow. And then what happens out of that seed begins to produce fruit that's enjoyable for those who are going to consume it. That's why apple trees exist, or orange trees exist, or grapevines exist. They don't exist for themselves, because if they did, if an apple never got picked, or grapes never got picked, or oranges never got picked, and they just stayed on the vine or stayed on the tree, you know what would happen to them? They would become rotten. And a life that doesn't get picked, if you will, is that person becomes rotten. So when you have so-called setbacks in life, that's not a failure. It's just a step to get to where it is that you're really trying to get to reach your goal, whatever your goal is in life. So it's not going to come right away. So you might have a setback. So you might stumble along the way. But it doesn't mean that it's over, that you're not going to ever reach it, that you don't have a chance to reach your goal. It just means that there's something within me, there's something that within my character that needs to be developed, and this is why I'm having this setback. This is why I wasn't successful this time. And you know that some of your best life lessons, if you will, come from your setbacks, come from the things that you sometimes lose in life. So Giannis hit it right out of the park when it comes to life. You work hard, you give your best. And at the end of the day, if you've given your best, if you put your best effort forward, and you know, only you and God know, if you put your best effort forward in whatever the endeavor is, and it may not turn out exactly the way you hoped it to be or you wanted it to be, does that make you a failure? Of course not. You only fail when you don't put the effort in, when you don't do your best. But when you put your all into it, when you're dedicated, when you work hard at whatever it is you're doing, and you give it your very best, you don't halfway through it, or you half do it, or slop it together, or throw it together, and it doesn't come out right, you're not a failure. Parents, if you're listening, instill this in your children to always strive for excellence, knowing that you're going to fall short sometimes. But when you fall short, you don't give up, you don't quit, you don't say, I'm a failure, and you throw in the towel. You just get up, you dust yourself off, and you keep on going. All of us were kids at one time. When you first learned how to ride a bike, there were some times you might have fallen off the bike. Did you just give up and say, I'm not going to ride the bike anymore? No, of course not. You get back on it until you master it. And so what Gianna is saying here is just because we did not accomplish what we set out to do doesn't mean it was a failure. And I get what he's saying, especially from a life perspective. From a sports perspective, though, when you are a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, when you are such a heavy favorite, when you have arguably the best team in the league, when you have arguably the best player in the league, and you lose to a team that is inferior to you, that you're basically better than in basically almost all aspects of the game, it does make you question, maybe not if you were a failure, but did I personally put the effort forward that needed to be done in order to get us over the hump? Now, in this case, especially with a player like Giannis, who's one of the hardest, no, he would not consider himself a failure, not because he has a huge ego, but he knows how much effort he put into it. He knows how hard he worked during the regular season, during the off season, in his strength and conditioning, in his body and his game to improve the aspects of his game. He knows all the work that he put in, and he knows at the end of the day that he gave the very best that he possibly could. So to ask him, do you consider this a failure? Of course he's going to say no. Because you're not always going to be successful in your endeavor. At the end of the day, at the end of this season, there's only going to be one team after the last game of the year, whenever that is, that's going to be happy. Everyone else is going to look at something that they need to do in order to improve themselves to get to the level of that champion. So no, he is not a failure. The team did not accomplish their goals for several reasons. Now, strictly from a sports standpoint, I don't know how closely you followed that series, but if you watched that series, there were some coaching blunders that were made, in my opinion. For example, Game 4, I'm not going to dwell too much on it because we're almost at the end of our time here on the show. But at the end of Game 4, for example, Milwaukee was ahead 101-89 midway through the fourth quarter in Game 4 in Miami. Jimmy Butler then went on a tear where he scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to lead Miami to a come-from-behind win in that game. Now, here's something that can be, when I talked about adjustments in the first half of the show, talking about the Cavs, here's some adjustments that could have been made. Why didn't Milwaukee coach Mike Budenholzer do anything to double team Dwayne Wade to get the ball out of his hands, especially, as I said earlier, where Miami's two best scorers behind Jimmy Butler both were injured? Why didn't he do something to double team him to get the ball out of his hands? That was Game 4. Game 5, Milwaukee's ahead by 2 points with 4 seconds left in the game. Miami calls a timeout to inbound the ball. Now, you take out Robin Lopez, who was third in voting as far as Defensive Player of the Year this year. You took him out of the game. Why, I don't know. Your second, one of your former Defensive Player of the Year, Gianna Antetokounmpo, you put him on the inbounding the ball. And you put an obviously exhausted Drew Holiday, who's a great defender, but had to defend Jimmy Butler by himself again. In addition to running the Milwaukee offense, you put him on there with no rim protection. Miami throws the ball into Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler scores a bucket at the rim, send the game into overtime, where Miami subsequently wins the game. Those are coaching decisions. This is the same Mike Budenholzer the year that the Milwaukee won the title. If you remember in the first round against the Brooklyn Nets, who were down Kyrie Irving in that series. Yeah, I know. Stop the presses like you've never heard that before. And they had a hobbled James Harden. In Game 7, Kevin Durant hit a jump shot that if he was 1 inch more behind the three-point, would have been 1 inch further back, rather, would have put him behind the three-point line, which would have, instead of tying the game, sending it over to overtime, and it was Game 7 that Milwaukee wind up winning in overtime, they would have lost that game. And he put P.J. Tucker, who is considerably shorter than Kevin Durant, on Kevin Durant in that situation instead of putting Giannis on him to make it a more difficult shot. He got away with it that time. They won, as I said, eventually went on to win the title that year. But what if Kevin Durant had stepped an inch further back? That would have cost them that series. So even though he is a coach with a championship and has a very good pedigree as an NBA coach, I think he'll be the fall guy for this. We'll see. You've been listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. We're going to end our show this week. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to the Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon. Perhaps maybe we'll pick that up next week. That'll still be newsworthy, in my opinion, then. But I want to close our show, as we close each week, with our hero and our zero of the week. And our hero of the week is imprisoned Wall Street journalist, Wall Street reporter, Evan Gershkovich. He's imprisoned in Moscow. Yeah, where we heard that before. He's being held falsely on espionage charges, as we said all along during the whole Brittany Griner saga, and even more so for the Marine that's still being held over there. That if they really thought that these people were committing espionage, they would have executed them. But all he was doing was reporting on the economic effects in Russia of the sanctions that have been placed on Russia by the United States and Western European countries because of the illegal, immoral, war criminal war that the butcher of the Crimea, war criminal Vladimir Putin, has launched on the Ukraine. So he's over there just reporting on the effect that the sanctions have had on Russia's economy. And the Russian government arrests him, imprisons him for espionage, and will not allow the consulate from the ambassador from the U.S. consulate to visit with him. So he is a hero of the week. Please keep him and his family in prayer, and hopeful that he will soon be released, along with other Americans that are being held in Russia. The zero of the week is the government that's holding him. And that is the demonic, the murderous, the treacherous, the criminal, autocratic dictatorship of the war criminal government, led by the war criminal, I should say, Vladimir Putin. The Russian government is the zero of the week. That's our show for today, folks. You've been listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise here on Contemporary Talk and so much more, WMDS. But right now, I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your time, and until next Saturday at 3 p.m., shalom.
We'd like to thank you for tuning in to the right side with your host, Jeff Doggett, on the station where we don't bring no static, but we sure not bring the noise, no staticradio.net. Make sure you guys check us out on social media where we absolutely love to hear from you on Facebook.com/No Static Radio LLC, on Twitter at No Static _ radio, on Instagram at the real _ No Static Radio. Be safe. And on YouTube at No Static Radio. Also, if you guys would like to listen to replays of this show and others on NoStaticRadio.net, please make sure you check us out on Mixler or Mixcloud.com. Just type in No Static Radio on the toolbar for replays of this show and all others on the platform. And for an uninterrupted listening experience, that means no refreshing the page. Just sit back, relax, let a rebuffering go on, and maybe a commercial or two, and bam, you've got us on TuneIn.com, liveonlineradio.net, or MediaQ for continuous streaming of this show and all others on the platform, and for all things No Static Radio, including up-and-coming events, merchandise, and an in-depth look at all our great show hosts here. Please check out our website at www.nostaticradio.net. Thank you so much for tuning in on this sensational Saturday. And you know what it is. Listen, I want you to stay safe, stay unwet, and we've got more music for your listening pleasure here on your voice of the revolution of staticradio.net, powered by Google, partner with Colors, and sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines and Hot Girls Gear. You guys be safe. Have a wonderful and safe weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Peace.
Yeah, I'll see you Tuesday because I'm
Yes. Yep. I'll see you on Tuesday. Have a good one. Be safe.